What red flags in a relationship do you wish you hadn't ignored? Excessive control masked as care and affection may seem sweet at first. You might think that the person truly cares about you and worries about your well-being. But over time, it transforms into an absolute nightmare. The control extends to every aspect of your life, from your appearance to your social media and who you interact with. You start to fear doing something wrong, afraid of triggering another argument, but there's always a reason to nitpick. If you sense that you're being controlled, don't hesitate to stop it right away. The fact that all of her exes were horrible people who had done horrible things to her and she was always just the victim, there were a bunch of other red flags. But when I ran into a guy I worked with while her and I were walking into a store and she freaked out about me knowing him. He was one of her exes who she had shit-talked, but only referred to him by his first name. I had to question all her stories. This guy was one of the most stand-up people I'd ever met. Turns out she was bats hit insane. Also accused me of having sex with her dog because she had a dream about it. Definitely don't ignore that. I should have ran when I heard my ex's reaction to a sad story. I was one day telling my ex about a family friend whose son, 30, married, good life and was in the middle of getting a PhD, had a heart attack, lost oxygen to his brain and became mentally and physically handicapped. Shitty American health insurance hardly covered his treatments and he was left with needing expensive therapies, hospital stays, and medications. Of course the community came together to fundraise the money for them. Well, since his wife was still married to him, this fundraised money was also technically her money. One night, she took it all and ran. There was nothing that could be done. My ex's reaction, well, that was her right to do so. What's the problem? It's not illegal? He ended up being so nasty to me and that right there should have been my reason to leave. Huge red flag that I ignored. Always having an excuse for her behavior and disregarding my concerns. Asking me if I'd ever cheated on a partner before, I never have, and then dancing around the question when I asked her it back instead of answering. Just being mad disrespectful about her ex when he never hurt her. Randomly going into in-depth talks about her exes. Withdrawing emotionally. My best friend will decide if you'll be my boyfriend or not / I need you to meet my best friend so she can decide if we'll continue this. Not wanting to be caught with me in public by her mom / s friends. The list could go on, but at least I'll never ignore any of them again in someone else. When I first met my husband, I would watch him work on a vehicle. If there was a problem, he would throw a fit and throw tools, and he would be in a bad mood. Years later, he does the same, but the anger he has seeped into other areas of life, because he has never dealt with whatever issues have caused that anger. To live with someone like this becomes walking on eggshells to please him, because he is critical, and has high expectations, and is so easily irritated, etc. It is very draining, and steals any life and fun out of life. I have always been the one to try to lighten the mood, and laugh and play. I would tell anyone that if you see anger, run very far away. That is something they need to fix and deal with. You will not change that person. They have got to want to change, and if they don't, then you're in for a crappy married life, with rare moments of good times. After 26 years, and becoming a shell of myself living with this person, I felt that I was drowning. The divorce will be final soon. Love bombing, asking me to be his GF after 2 weeks of talking. Breadcrumbing me just enough to keep me invested. Apologizing about his hurtful actions, but never changing them. Avoiding talking about any problems / concerns about our relationship and his behaviors to the point I stopped bringing it up, which made me develop severe anxiety issues in all areas of life, but especially in a relationship. Never wanting to spend time together / trying new things together, unless it was about sex. Making secret profiles so he could lust at another women online. Poor emotional regulation. Lack of emotional intelligence, especially empathy. Extreme self-centeredness. No relationship experience outside of high school. Poor communication skills and avoidance of communication altogether. Inconsiderate of other people's time, feelings, or belongings. Hypocritical. Self-aggrandizing narratives about themselves and their life. Calling themselves an entrepreneur or investor for gambling with cryptocurrency. Enmeshed with their emotionally incestuous mother. Making excuses for their deadbeat father. Elon Musk and Trump fanboy. Lack of general education and no interest or curiosity to learn or grow in that department. If you call your girlfriend or wife chubby every day and claim it's as a term of endearment, you can't then get upset when she assumes you think she's chubby. Additionally, when your partner says fine, I'll never tease you ever again, or something else similarly manipulative when you bring up a bad joke or yet feelings. They do it because they know it's slowly eroding your own self-esteem and killing your energy to bring up things that bother you. I have the feeling that many people underestimate this. I grew up with an abusive, manipulative mother and she lied often about unimportant, small details, too. And I never met anyone else who lied about small things and was a normal, mentally stable person. I had a roommate who would lie about small things. She also snapped at my brother, who was also her fiancé, for being in a bad mood the day after his grandma died. He wasn't snapping at anyone or anything like that, he just looked sad. She told him it was putting her in a bad mood. She had this way of making absolutely everything about herself. She also looked smug and amused whenever she was being disrespectful and condescending, including the example of his grandma dying. So, yeah, never trust a compulsive liar. They're too self-centered, apathetic, and just mean-hearted. My brother is a total doormat, so they're married now. I just had one do that to me in the initial stage of writing after matching. I seriously considered breaking it off right then and there, but didn't. Skip to 3 months later, turns out she had a hardcore BDSM relationship to a married man going on at the side, even after we discussed exclusivity. So guys, learn from my fail and listen to this person's advice. This so much. My ex would run up her credit card debt and not mention it to a soul. When notices finally started coming from collection agencies, she would go to her parents, ask them to pay for it, and break down and cry whenever they asked her any questions and blame them for not understanding how difficult her life was. This is a woman who was raised with extreme privilege. Her parents have bought her 2 separate houses to live. They very recently bought her a brand new car. They have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a constant state of paying for her education and debts, though at nearly 40 the most she ever achieved was completing a 2-year nursing program. They also very recently have paid for a high-priced criminal and family law lawyer as she was arrested for assaulting me. She returned to school again and pays very minimal child support, though she receives a ridiculously high amount to live off of. Quite unbelievably, the last time I heard anything I found out she still lectures people about getting their lives together. I have never seen such massive cognitive dissonance in my life. That's the thing, you can never respond with the same energy. That's how you know they're definitely insults, not just jokes. They've already placed themselves above you, on a social hierarchy they've created in their own heads. I've got a cousin I don't like talking to because of this exact reason. She thinks it's so funny to describe every thin person as anorexic, but God forbid anyone says anything about her literal obesity. Her insecurity is blatantly obvious, but she's the type that would rather tear others down, instead of just taking better care of herself. She's been like this since we were kids. I always thought she'd grow out of it eventually, but nope. She just kept growing horizontally. Was having a talk with my ex. There was no physical intimacy anymore. I took her hands in mine, pressed them to my face and said, "It's me, the guy you married. I love you. I need you. I'm right here." A few days later, having a hard day at work, I was sitting on the couch. She walked over, pressed her hands against my face, laughed and walked away. She did that a few more times over the next few weeks. Cruelty at its finest. I left a relationship that went exactly like this a few years ago. It's wild how long it took me to realize what was happening. It all crashed in on me one day and I ended up packing everything I could into my car and fleeing across the country while he was at work. I talked myself out of those "something feels wrong" thoughts too many times. Listen to your gut. I once dreamt that a boyfriend cheated on me in my dreams and I took a swing at him. Turns out I actually took a swing at him. I basically punched him in the chest in my sleep. He bolts awake and asks what the fuck that was about. I mumble something about him being a cheating asshole and fell back asleep. I thought it was all part of my dream, so it was a wild conversation when we actually woke up and he once again asked what the fuck that was all about and I learned part of it was real. That's super gross that she did that. Just to point out, presenting as a super stand-up person doesn't mean anything at all and shouldn't generally be used as a defense. These people can easily do shitty/terrible things when no one else is around to see it. I've experienced this, and I don't know that I would freak out if my current partner knew them, but I'd definitely have a conversation with my partner and find out what that relationship was and go in depth in order to maintain my own safety and boundaries around the other person who essayed me when he thought he could get away with it. Ex throwing and breaking things when he was angry over trite shit. Ignored it because it was directed at objects, and I've thrown things in anger before. However, after we married he started throwing things at me and wouldn't stop after I warned him multiple times that behavior was a deal breaker. And the things he broke were always my things. I left him. He was stunned. We hit a few rough patches, and she went silent for long periods of time. So the last time that happened, I just assumed that we're in one of those mood swings again. Turns out, she wasn't happy in the relationship, and had for 2 years been thinking about breaking things off. But because we were both shit at communicating as kids, started dating at 22 and 20, and lasted almost a decade, we had no idea what was bothering the other person. Shit could have been over 5 years earlier if we just talked. Side note, the desire to not overreact is a problem within women by itself. Like seeing other women being constantly labeled crazy and emotional and dramatic makes us not want to be that desperately. Feeling emotions and reacting to / having a problem with anything is framed as a bad thing, which is fucking crazy. I hate that it's such a universal and easy thing to pick on and use against us to silence us. Fuck that. Rant over.